with his disposition as to their use, he labels I. And thus he is deluded into calling a ghost by his own name. Hidden behind this ghost, obscured by its struggles and fancies, is the secret self, which even though hidden, ignored, or misunderstood, nevertheless moves all things on the chessboard of life, according to their natures and aspirations. We are never ego or sense self. These are masks we don as we play at the parts we find in life. What we truly are is not a changing thing, but is whole and entire, powerful and serene, limitless and eternal. It springs from the inexhaustible source of life itself, and when we learn to identify ourselves with it, then we have hitched a ride on a power so far beyond our tiny temporal selves that our lives are changed in the most amazing manner. The imprisoned self. To be what we are and to become what we are capable of being, wrote Robert Louis Stevenson, is the only end of life. But when we stultify our divine birthright in manacles of mental and spiritual limitations, then we have no alternative but stagnation and pain. As long as we are responsive solely to the stimuli that impinge upon our senses from the outer world, we have no choice but to be victims of every circumstance. Locked to the senses, we reel under each stimulus. Now aggressive, now afraid, now joyful, now sad, now seeking death, now life, but always our inner serenity and equilibrium are in the hands of something we neither understand nor control. And so we are puppets, pulled by invisible and unknown strings, swirling in the maelstrom of life like scraps of paper in the wind. And if perchance we garner knowledge enough to perceive our helplessness, then we often are overcome with such depths of sadness as to make effort against our bonds an almost unimaginable thing. But the moment that we pause long enough in the headlong rush of life to see that we are not moving in accord with or in response to our own decisions, but rather in reaction to the world around us, then we have taken the first step toward freedom. Only one who knows his slavery can aspire to be free, just as true freedom is possible only to one who has experienced chains. Our hates, loves, fears, envies, aspirations, deceits are for the most part products of circumstance, of false and limiting codes and mores, more often innate terrors of mountains that are molehills, and the solution to all of them is to stand foursquare before them, daring them to do their utmost, exposing them for what they are, thus forswearing allegiance to the cupidity of the deluding and blinding ego which forever keeps us thinking we are greater than others and less than we truly are. The liberating power. It is not necessary to become a mystic, even a philosopher, certainly not a melancholy metaphysician in order to come to grips with the spiritual side of existence, to establish a mental causation in your life that will give you control of circumstance. What is necessary, however, is that you do not immediately throw out the door everything that has to do with spirit simply because it is the established province of religion. You may be a Christian, or a Hindu, a Muslim, or a Buddhist, a Taoist, or Shintoist, but that only increases your individual human responsibility to think through all issues that bear on the world and life and death and your individual being. Only when you come to grips with your own mental essence, only when you arrive at a realization of the ephemeral, ever-changing nature of I, will it become apparent that everything is in a constant state of growth and development and aspiration. And there are no limits and finalities and defeats, and anything is possible to one who first conceives the image in his mind. There is within us a power of complete liberation, descended there from whatever mind or intelligence lies behind creation, and through it we are capable of becoming anything and doing anything we can visualize. The mental stuff of which we are made is of such kind and quality that it responds to the formation of images within it by the creation of a counterpart that is discernible to the senses. Thus, any picture we hold in our minds is bound to resolve in the material world. We cannot help ourselves in this. As long as we live and think, we will hold images in our minds, and these images develop into the things of our life. And so long as we think a certain way, we must live a certain way, and no amount of willing or wishing will change it. Only the vision we carry within. The law of life. It is astounding and sad to see the many thousands of people whose mental machinery keeps delivering to them the very effects they say they do not want. They bewail the fact that they are poor, but that doesn't make them richer. They complain about their aches and pains, but they keep right on being sick. They say that nobody likes them, which means they don't like anybody. They aren't bold, they aren't aggressive, they aren't imaginative. Mentally, they quiver and quake and are bound to negative delusion. It simply doesn't matter what the picture in your mind is. It is delivered nonetheless, with the same amount of faithfulness and promptness if it is a picture of poverty or disease or fear or failure as it would be if it were a picture of wealth or health or courage or success. The law of life is this: all things, both good and evil, are constructed from an image held in mind. A tightrope walker edges swiftly out on his elastic and minuscule support. High in the air, wavering, suspended on a thin black line, he seems to transgress all normal laws of behavior. What is astonishing is not that he is able to do this thing so well, but that he dares attempt it at all. Yet what he is doing is an inescapable result of mental law. Long before he set his first uncertain steps on the taut wire, he made a picture in his mind. Throughout his early bumbling attempts, the picture persisted. He saw himself, agile, balanced, adroitly crossing the swaying wire, and this vision sustained him through all early failures. Now he flaunts his skill and courage in the very face of death, nonchalantly as the spectators gasp. He is sure, poised, confident, delivered of all fear and mishap by the sustaining picture within. Image power. The image power of the mind is imagination. But just what imagination is and where it comes from, nobody seems to know. A famous surgeon is reputed to have remarked that he had sliced open many a brain without ever having seen a picture or found a thought. The imagination certainly is no more exclusive property of the brain than of the arm, a leg, or the stomach. Thinking is performed not by a part of the body, or even the whole body, but by the inhabitant within. It is that function which enables consciousness to know its surroundings and to know itself. Only one who thinks is able to say, I. Only one who can say, I, is able to cast up pictures within his own being, known to no others. The eternal striving, knowledge, and capacity, the most apparent thing about life, is resolved always by two principal elements of the strife: the knower and the thing to be known. By definition, these appear to be separate, and we observe that a man ordinarily copes with the outer world by tabulating the manner in which it impinges upon his senses. A thing is so long and so wide, and weighs so much, and is so hard, and a certain color. A name is given it, and as long as each subsequent time it is encountered it maintains the majority of its original characteristics, a man recognizes it for what it is, and knows it when he sees it. If you ask him if it is near, he is able to answer instantly, simply by glancing around. If its presence produces some particular effect upon him, like fear or anger or love or tension, then the mere presence or absence of this object may be said to materially affect his life. In that case, his state of mind is not a matter of his own determination, but instead is the direct result of the object as he encounters it or avoids it in the outer world. Inner vision. Life in animal and vegetable forms is purely a matter of reaction. There is first the organism, then there are the elements that intrude their presence upon it. The conflict thus engendered resolves itself in the process of evolution, as each organism attempts to overcome the obstacles it meets. But this influence, through the lower stages of evolution, apparently comes only from outside and is the result of processes and forces beyond the control of the organism. Nature holds the world and life in an iron grip, and lower animal as well as vegetable life is led inexorably along a path it neither understands nor can avoid. A thing is the kind of thing it is through a creative process that appears to be outside it. Existence itself, in any shape or form, appears to be beyond the power and scope of the individual being. We are born and we die, and nothing within our known powers or knowledge can aid or stop these events. And insofar as we live in response to the senses, we are automatons only, and the shape of our lives is predestined by the circumstances we encounter. Imagination is the tool by which we may be delivered from our bondage. We can decide what we will think. We can decide to originate thought from some secret wellspring within, rather than in response to the stimuli of the outer world. We can resolve that the images in our minds will no longer be products of the conditions we meet, but instead that our visualization will be the result of our inner resources and strength, in conformance with our goals and desires. Thus, the quality of our consciousness will be tempered by our true motivations, and we are freed at once of the trap of defeating our purposes through giving credence to every obstacle. The unalterable law is this: only that which takes root in mind can become a fact in the world. Thus, the man whose consciousness is influenced only by the goals and purposes he has set within is delivered of all defeat and failure. For obstacles then are only temporary and have no effect upon his inner being. Only that which conforms to his inner vision is accepted home at last and allowed to take root in the plastic, creative medium of the secret self. The secret self. It is knowledge about and faith in this secret self that is the key to correct use of the imagination. No man lives in the dark when he learns where the light is. To understand the secret self is to free oneself from bondage to circumstance, to loose within a power compounded upon itself, to provide life with perfect working and perfect serenity. This entity within each of us, not the ego, not experience, not time or circumstance or place or position, but consciousness only, the I divested of all accoutrement, except pure sense of existence. This is the self that contains all power, whose essence is greater than the individual, greater than 10,000 individuals. For it is the supporting structure upon which all things are built, the evolving self of the universe. It is not confined to the body, to a time or place or condition, but is in all times and places and conditions. It is infinite and eternal and only one, but being so as easily manifest as the finite and temporal and many. All are contained within it, yet each contains it all. For by its very nature, all of it is every place at the same moment. The secret self is timeless and eternal. It is the self of the universe, and it is the self of each of us, the self of you. It was never born, and it will never die. It enters into each of its creations and becomes that creation. What is going on in life and the world and the universe is completely its working and the result of its secret purpose and undivulged goal. The nature of its being is mental. Its essence is dynamic and creative. It is the eternal stuff that occupies all space and time, and within which there is no dimension. It is all ends and middles and opposites and extremes, and it is infinitely creative. The myriad forms of life are but a tiny indication of its vast potential for plastic multiplicity out of its essential oneness. Mental ascendancy. The secret self is within you. It is not visited upon a fortunate few and withheld from others, but is totally existent in the heart of each of us. Insofar as we are able to divorce ourselves from the world and the ego and sensual stimuli, we will become increasingly aware of its existence within and consciously strive to identify ourselves with it. It is through this identification that the seeds of power are sown.